as a kid, like I loved these characters. I loved getting into these characters. And as I grew up, it became more about like understanding these characters, what they're all about. And as we've talked about before, from a young age, I was a very much a theater kid. Like even back to kindergarten, where I played Rainbow Fish in the hit production of Rainbow Fish.
So do you remember how long it was before you were able to get your first audition? Because I remember they consistently did send you job potentials.
They did.
But not everybody really would audition right away, right?
But I guess, my Homer sort of became one of my first and the easiest for me to do with my voice, where my go-to line is the one where Homer is looking under a couch trying to find a peanut that he accidentally dropped, and instead he gets a $20 bill. So what he says is, $20? I wanted a peanut. His brain goes, $20 can buy many peanuts. Explain how. Money can be exchanged for goods and services.
Okay, got it.
Oh, hey, look at us. We're back again.
Hey, how's it going, buddy boy?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. Last episode, there was actually something really important that happened in the last couple weeks that I forgot to bring up. I can talk again.
You can talk again.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, my
right.
voice is back. The laryngitis is gone. I decided the bit of me not being able to talk while co-hosting a podcast had run its course.
Well, you actually really did very well with it, even though I know you were struggling, but it is better.
It
much
is,
better. Well, thankfully now you can talk a little bit. We want to focus on our Jam Boutique.
Yep.
Don't forget, everybody, we've got an amazing giveaway, a diffuser, of course, the essential oil, and we've actually got the room spray. Jam Boutique is in, Austin, I love me some of this.
Oh, I know.
I love it. I feel like, or maybe it's just my personality, but whenever I'm kind of having a stressful day, I know sometimes I'll come in and I'll be like, light the candles.
You are all about your candles.
I really am, because as the scent comes, I'm just very much, okay, could just, peace. So Jam Boutique, you can get in a number of different grocery stores. Their line is expanding incredibly. So guys, if you want to win this package, you've got to you got to subscribe to the channel. It's free.
It is.
We are trying to reach 1,000 subscribers. We are getting close. And you've got to put a comment in. And when you do a comment, if you don't know what to say, you could easily just hashtag This Crazy Life Podcast.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. And
thank you to Jam.
Absolutely. And not just a comment on this video, comments on any of our videos. And it can be anything. The nice hashtag, This Crazy Life Podcast. Tell us what you want us to talk about in future episodes.
Or ask us questions.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe there's something you want to know a little bit more about us.
Right.
Yeah, that's okay too. So what are we going to talk about today?
Well, we had kind of teased it a little bit for the last few weeks about how Andrew and Nicole, my brother and his wife, they were telling us that maybe on an episode we should talk about my voice acting and maybe I could do a few voices. That had happened right as I started really getting sick, so we had to keep putting it off and off and off. But now that I can talk again, maybe we can actually talk a little bit about that.
I love that. I really think that it would be incredible for our viewers to kind of get to know a little bit more of what your passion is.
Right.
You started from a young age. Let's go back into time.
Okay. Let's do it.
Because, there's a lot of memories coming up right now.
Mm-hmm.
You and your brother are 2.5 years apart.
Yep.
So when you were born and when you were able to now sit beside him and watch movies on the floor, let's just say 4.5 and 2 years old, between you guys, your brother, gosh golly, Austin, I'm not going to remember the first video game that we bought him, but maybe would that just have been
I don't
Nintendo
know.
or something?
Probably,
whatever was out, but that would have been 90. So 1994, 95, whatever the game system
Probably a
was.
Mario game or something, yeah.
For sure it was the Donkey Kong, the Mario Kart, this type game. So what I remember is you loved to sit beside him. We had our TV. It was a tube TV in the corner of the family room, and the games were underneath it, and you would sit beside him. And he would be playing, whether it was Donkey Kong or Mario Brothers, whatever it was. And you would mimic the people playing.
Yeah.
So he'd be on the controller, whether he was bouncing up or down, and whatever the game player was doing on the screen, you were doing beside him. Like if there was a bounce, you would bounce. If it was Donkey Kong and he was climbing up a tree, you'd be climbing up the tree. And I remember looking at you and going, wow, like he's super animated.
Right.
So I feel like your voiceover acting and your passion for it, in my opinion, as your mom, watching that kind of over the years get bigger and bigger, I feel like it started at a very young age where you really, to me, you were imagining yourself being that character.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about that, and that definitely watching my brother playing video games, watching movies, things like that, that definitely had a huge role, on me as a person, because I'm still into those even as an adult, and just as a kid, like, I loved these characters. I loved getting into these characters. And as I grew up, it became more about like understanding these characters, what they're all about. And as we've talked about before, from a young age, I was very much a theater kid. Like even back to kindergarten, where I played Rainbow Fish in the hit production of Rainbow Fish.
I gotta try to find that picture. Oh my gosh, Austin, that was kindergarten.
That was kindergarten. Sure. Yeah.
And you were Rainbow Fish.
I was Rainbow Fish. Yep.
And you basically walked with a picture
of
a rainbow fish, and you would walk across the stage this way and across the stage this way.
Yep. And I had that rainbow fish hanging on my bedroom wall for a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think I have it anymore, unfortunately, but
it might be. It might be in a box.
Maybe we'll have to check. But yeah, and as I grew older, like a lot of my interests really veered towards the arts. In high school, like I said, I was big into drama. I was in plays and things like that. And part of me was wondering, like, oh, maybe I should pursue something in that area. It was around the time where I was still really trying to figure out what I really wanted to do with my life. And what also happened is whenever I would be asked to read things in school or wherever, I would always just put a little extra oomph into it. Like anyone can just read from a book, but I would like be actually like doing voices for certain characters when we were reading. Or if I just had to read a random thing from a certain page, I would talk like this and do that. I wasn't even thinking about it. I was just
You actually do that normally whenever you read something out loud. You're very emphatic when you read.
Yeah, and that wasn't even a conscious thing. I was just doing it, and people kept saying, dude, you have a really good voice. Like, maybe you could, like, be in radio or a voice actor or something. And I think that's sort of what really got me considering, oh, man, I was, like, really into all these characters as a kid in movies, cartoons, games. What if I could actually be that for someone else growing up? And that's really what got me thinking about it and starting to look into it, I would say.
I remember around that time, and that was also right when we were experiencing a little bit of your mental health journey.
Yeah.
And it was right around the time where we had that day, that bad night. And I remember I was selling a home to a buyer of mine and her significant other. and he is a full-fledged voiceover actor,
Mm-hmm.
and had a studio in their basement. So I got to know him a little bit. His name is Nick, because when we were looking at basements,
Yeah.
We needed to make sure that the studio would fit
Right.
in the basement. So it became a very big part of the buying process, making sure. And so as I was out night after night showing them houses, your interest as well, if I'm remembering it correctly, was growing and growing. But where do I start?
Right.
And that's where I would then start saying, hey, Nick, can I ask you some questions? Because where do I help my kid get into what you clearly have? I mean, he to this day is making a living
Right.
through it.
Yeah.
So I mean, he started from ground zero and, clearly worked his way up. So he started kind of pointing us in some of the right directions. And really at the end of the day, what I remember him suggesting to you and to me that I passed along to you was it starts with a talent agency.
Yeah.
Whether or not you decide to leave and grow your talent agency, you don't have to stay with the same one for a long time, but they're the ones that get the jobs sent to them that you can start applying for. So I remember you joined an online. You didn't have to go there physically, if I remember that correctly.
You would put in like your voice profile, you'd upload demo reels, and they would send you potential matches based off of your general profile. It's a very first step kind of thing. So I would just be getting sent jobs in the email, and I would audition for them and see what sticks, really.
But going back to the beginning, and I want to go back to the beginning before we jump too quickly, is I remember you saying to me, and correct me if I'm remembering this wrong, that you had to start building your reel.
Yeah.
You were going to be able to get sent more jobs and get on more auditions based on how much you had in that reel.
Yeah.
And that reel, I remember, Austin, that you had to create your own reel because you didn't have any jobs to go by. So you actually had to put these voices.
I would have to come up with my own voices, yeah.
And record them on a reel, or I'm assuming it was just a USB. I don't even know.
Yeah, just an MP3 file on my computer, yeah.
Okay, right. So you really did start to create and really get yourself into knowing that the bigger that the reel was, the more auditions you could potentially go on.
Yeah.
So do you remember how long it was before you were able to get your first audition? I remember they consistently did send you job potentials.
They did.
But not everybody really would audition right away, right?
No, not necessarily. Like, some of them I would read and I'd be like, that's not a good fit for me. And others would be like, I would audition and I'd hear nothing back. It was a whole thing. I would actually say my first job actually came very quickly, in that it was for this independent fantasy game. I may have talked about this very briefly on the podcast, but I never got the name of it. To this day, I'm not sure if it ever came out, but I played a dwarf in one of the quests that was helping out a main character, and I got paid for it, and I played the role. But again, I have no idea if this game actually exists.
Do you remember your name?
I was dwarf.
Oh, the name was dwarf?
I was an unnamed dwarf.
Oh, you were no-name dwarf. Okay. What, do you remember the voice?
Yeah, it was very, very Lord of the Rings-esque kind of dwarf. So it was like, oh, how you doing there, my friend?
Oh,
that sort of thing.
That sounds a little Irish as well.
And I remember I showed you that voice, and your exact words were, oh, I was thinking of like Snow White when you said dwarfs.
I was thinking squeaky.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay, that's interesting. That was your first job.
That was my first one, which came very quickly. And after that, they were like just here and there, spread pretty far apart. My second gig I got was just using my regular voice. It was for some company. They were doing in-house work PSAs for like what not to do, safety things, things like that. So I sent my reel. They actually reached out to me. They said, "Hey, we really liked your reel. We were wondering if you could play this character who's just being like really berating to this female employee, like just being really mad at her, things like that." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, I can do that." Again, it was just my regular speaking voice, so I did it. I got paid for it. And then a couple weeks later, they were like, "Hey, we actually really liked your performance. We were wondering if you could do a second one for us." And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely, no
It's
problem."
amazing.
They're like, "Great. We want you to play this person who's really insensitive towards another person's race and religious beliefs." And I was like, they got this from like my regular voice. So I was like, is that how I sound? Is that how I sound to people when I talk? They're just like, "That one, he's an asshole. Get him."
Oh. Wow. So, you know what? I guess that would be interesting because if I remember you getting sent a lot of different roles, like
Yeah.
whatever the name of this talent agency was, they definitely were sending you quite a bit
A
of stuff.
lot.
Clearly, you weren't going to get you weren't going to be brought in for auditions on all of them.
No.
But if there was anything that kind of came to you that you didn't feel comfortable even doing, would you have said, "No, this isn't something that I can support"?
I would just ignore it completely. Like I just would completely delete the project and just move on. I was getting jobs sent to me every day,
Yeah.
like at least 2 or 3. So obviously I didn't audition for all of them. Like there'd be some where sometimes it's like a project that I just don't have interest in. Sometimes it's a project that I feel like isn't like a good match. Like sometimes the algorithm just gets wonky and it says it wants a Spanish speaker. And I'm like, well, that's not me.
Well, that's true, right? If
And
you can't produce the voice, why would you audition?
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And I think that's a very important part of being an actor and being a voice actor is understanding your range and the limits that come with it. Like my voice is on a very medium low register. So you want me to play like a bee, a cartoon bee with a very high pitched voice. I'm physically not going to be able to do that as well as someone with a higher pitched voice. That's just a fact.
Okay. Can I throw a caveat into that?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you could do voice training to be able to reach different levels to get you different jobs? Or is that just not an option for a voiceover actor?
To a certain degree, yes. But there are just some physical limitations that come with that. Like,
okay.
if I like spoke as high as I could go, like I could maybe sound something like this.
Okay, I think that sounds pretty good, actually.
Yes.
For like, I'm looking at a cartoon character, maybe a little baby or
something like that.
I got it.
You could get a girl to play a kid, which is very common in cartoons. Female voice actors just voicing little boys, things like that. Or you could just get a guy with a very much higher pitched voice who'd probably be able to do something similar to me, but maybe less strained than it would sound coming from me.
Wow.
So yeah, so that was like the main thing, sorting through the auditions of finding what would be a good fit for me and things that like I'd be interested in doing, which again, I wasn't particularly picky because I was just starting out. But there are plenty of jobs where I'm like, I wouldn't be good for that. So I'm just going to leave it alone.
Right. Well, I know that you did get quite a few jobs, and then you did start working full time for me.
Yeah.
You were still auditioning a lot, but I feel like as you were auditioning, and of course you were getting better mics with.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking very layman's terms, screens in front of them. Like, I'm like, oh, okay, we're getting a little, you and I started talking about, okay, do we have to actually physically bring a studio in?
Yeah.
So that you've actually got the proper room when you're doing your recordings and so forth. So we were almost at that level when I feel like you started to kind of it became a backseat where, and I think that that's normal, Austin, because we do get busy with other things. And I always said to you, I want you to pursue your dreams. But when we pursue our dreams, we still have to make a living.
Right.
You know, you still have to work, you still have to earn money in pursuit of your dream. And then hopefully your dream will turn into something that will then be able to pay you and you can live off of, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly the kind of point that I had hit with voice acting, where I was getting jobs. Like I think the highest profile thing I ever got was a video game that released called 911 Operator, where I played a man who had his leg chopped off. But I was very quickly hitting a point where the technology and environment I had available to me at home would become a hindrance to getting further. Like, I was going to need better mics, better studios,
for sure,
better environment. Like,
but we were talking about
we were
that.
talking about it, but the thing was, like, those are things that aren't cheap and they would take time. And it got to a point where I was like, yeah, this is absolutely what I want to do. But as you said, in the meantime, I need to be able to start to support myself and build a life for myself. And once I have that, start putting money towards being able to get these things.
I see.
So I realized, like, I love voice acting, but in the meantime, I need to be able to devote myself to whatever my work happens to be. At the time, I was just working in restaurants, and then I had started to do desk work, admin work for you with our real estate business. And eventually that turned into me becoming a realtor. But voice acting is still very much on the mind. It's part of what influenced you with saying, hey, maybe we should start a podcast. Is my work, what I love, is in the voice.
I want to help you do whatever it takes to continue to grow your artistic side. And I think that the public is really seeing how incredible you are behind this thing called a microphone, whether it's voiceover acting, whether it's you taking this podcast to an entirely different level. This is a decision we made based on your mental health journey. Knowing that you were having, I would say, maybe more darker days. Not too bad, but, and that's where you and I talked openly. And I said, well, listen, you know, where we're getting our social media done monthly, they're a production company. They have a studio. Do you think we should invest in that for you to fulfill that artistic side and bring additional light into your mental health journey? And that's kind of how this came to fruition. And I remember you said to me, you do that? And I'm like, we've got nothing to lose, but we've got everything to gain.
Right. Yeah.
Right? So here we are.
Yep.
You know, every day is a success with this podcast. So why don't you, because who knows who's going to see this, buddy? I mean, you know, there could be a lot of directors watching right now. You never know where this is going to go. Tara always thinks big. Tara always thinks big. So why don't you showcase, when we were out for dinner for my birthday with Andrew and Nicole, they were like, you gotta do some of these voices. So, I know you have SpongeBob in your repertoire.
Yep, some SpongeBob characters.
I know you have maybe a little bit of Shrek. I know you have a little something in The Simpsons.
Oh, yeah.
So do you want to showcase some of the different voices that you've done throughout the years?
Well, I guess the one Andrew would always ask about is my Homer Simpson.
Oh, my gosh.
And I'll tell you what, I'll say this. The family was always pretty supportive of me being a voice actor. Andrew, at first, when I told him, he was unsure about it. But very quickly after I started pursuing it, this was around the time he was in university, I would get phone calls at like 2 a.m. of him with his friends just drunk. He's just like, hey, man, I got all my friends on speaker. Can you do Homer?
And you would do it.
And I would do it
from my
and
bedroom.
It would keep happening. And
all right.
Yeah, so that was great. But I guess yeah, my Homer sort of became one of my first. It's one of the easiest for me to do with my voice. Where my go-to line is the one where Homer is looking under a couch trying to find a peanut that he accidentally dropped, and instead he gets a $20 bill. So what he says is, $20. I wanted a peanut. His brain goes, $20 can buy many peanuts. Explain how. Money can be exchanged for goods and services.
Okay, got it. So that's your Homer.
Yeah, that's my go-to with Homer, which sort of became the one I always go to when I'm asked to do a voice.
Okay.
Yep. And then I used to be able to do the kids. That sort of went away as my voice really began to drop.
Yeah, so, you got a deep voice. All right.
Yep. The one Andrew asked me to do at dinner was Donkey.
Oh, crap. Yes, he did. Oh, my gosh. This might be my favorite.
Which surprised me because I actually hadn't tried to do that before because it's Eddie Murphy. It's just Eddie Murphy.
But Donkey was awesome.
Oh, he was great in the movie. So, like, I was trying to think of a line, and the one I settled on for some reason was, I like that boulder. That is a nice boulder.
That's good. All right.
Yep. So there was that. There was Shrek, which is a really, the Scottish accent. Like, what are you doing in my swamp?
Okay, good.
Yep. SpongeBob, I used to be able to do really well, but again, as my voice got lower, that became a lot harder for me to do. So, let's see. I could do Squidward from SpongeBob. You were never a big fan of the SpongeBob cartoons growing up.
Oh, SpongeBob I liked. They got to be, honestly, like, Austin, let's be real. I'm going to talk for every mother and parents out there. If we saw it once, we saw it a million times.
Yeah. So I could do Squidward, SpongeBob's grumpy neighbor, where we look outside, he'd go, I didn't realize it was Happy Hopping Moron Day.
That does sound like him.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then SpongeBob's best friend, Patrick Star, a little slow. He would say, the inner machinations of my mind are an enigma.
Okay. I don't even remember that guy. We're going to have to call him. Maybe the production company can call up images of these.
Oh, yeah, we can have like images on the video.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll see if they can do that for sure.
I remember when we had our Katie Cat, you were doing an audition, and I remember it was a really scary voice. Like to me, you sounded like some big dragon or monster or something, and you practiced it endlessly before you actually had to do the audition.
Yeah.
And every time you would practice that particular character, oh my gosh, she would fly to the basement. You freaked her out.
Oh yeah.
Was it not
It was definitely a monster. What I think it was an audition for some fighting game. I didn't get the part, but it was specifically like some kind of like alien monster-y thing where it was described as like being evil, like really liking to fight and hurt things.
Yeah.
So I did like a full-on monster voice for that, which again, with deeper voices is something that you can be really good at. So what I did, and hopefully I don't blow out the mics while I'm doing this.
Maybe move it away from you.
Yeah. So I think the line was, I crave more.
Oh, that was it, Austin. Holy
and
man.
Katie did not like that.
Oh, Katie freaked out. She freaked out. I'll never
really
forget
did not
that.
like that one. No.
That might be my favorite voice of yours. Because when you do that character, you sound nothing like yourself.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's sort of the interesting thing with voice acting is oftentimes a lot of what people associate it with is, voices, like sounding different, playing certain characters. But I think what's also important is that it is still acting. Like, you got to be able to sell your character convincingly, and if you really want to succeed. Like, I can put on like a deep booming voice, but if I read every line as, hello, how are you doing today? I am doing well. Lovely weather, isn't it? I'm going to get nowhere because that's terrible acting.
Right. Well, you know what? I think that's a spectacular small piece of you've got a lot more character voices that you can do, and maybe throughout different episodes we'll bring out a couple more people.
Yeah, who knows?
Hey, who knows who'll be sitting across from me one day?
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have you do the entire podcast as SpongeBob. Oh my God, could you imagine?
One day I'll try something like that for sure, because that seems like something I'd really find fun to do.
You know, there's something that we kind of were talking about a little bit before we started, how AI is becoming a very big thing across, let's just say across the world. I'm almost sensing that it's infiltrating most businesses to a certain degree.
Oh yeah.
I know from my perspective as a realtor, the lead generation companies where we buy leads from, a lot of them are incorporating an AI side where, you know, if I'm going to say this because I really don't participate in the AI side of the lead companies, but my understanding is they can kind of replace you in communicating directly with somebody that comes on your website and starts asking questions, and then they can kind of get them virtually in your car, and then you can take over as a human.
Right.
And I know that AI also seems to be, from what we've understood, kind of infiltrating as well the voiceover acting, where
they're trying.
Am I correct, Austin, that maybe studios can hire somebody as an AI behind the scenes virtually to create voices? So they no longer require you to come up with the voice, but artificial intelligence is doing it.
It's partly that, and partly I would say even more sinister than that. What they were trying to do, and this was a very big deal for a while, was they were saying, okay, we hire you, you come in, you do your voice, but we own the rights to your voice forever. And we possess the rights to replicate your voice using AI for future projects. They were basically trying to buy someone's voice and use it for whenever they want. And that caused like a huge stink.
Right.
And I would say rightfully so. Like, my thoughts on AI are pretty simple, is that I think it can be useful as a tool, as something to help with what you're doing. If you want to spruce something up, ask for suggestions. But it's not being used as a tool. It's being used to try and replace people, to make all these big companies save a few extra bucks from having to hire people.
Yeah.
And that was always going to be what it was going to be used for, because that's what these big super rich companies do.
You know, from a return on investment point of view, as of course, I'm not a super rich company owner, but you know, you definitely are looking to save money where you can.
Yeah.
And I think where I question AI and those that use it, I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm saying for me, I feel like when I have somebody that's inquiring about our services, our listings, what we can do for them to secure them a home, I don't want anyone speaking on my behalf to encourage them to use me.
Right.
And then I kind of wonder, and maybe this is just the way that my brain works, is I'm like, every time stores get rid of employees, cashiers, let's say, and now they put in, you know, self-serve.
Yeah.
Everybody blows up.
Right.
You know, why are you losing, you know, you're firing, you know, Walmart, you're firing
dozens of
25
people,
cashiers. You now have 3 and you have 50 self-checkouts. Isn't that what AI is really doing? There are people that are no longer required to work, because we can through virtually create it on a computer to do the same job and only maybe pay the creator a quarter of what
It's the
a yearly
exact
salary
it's the
is.
exact same thing. It's taking that and applying it to really tech and entertainment industries. It's just trying to cut people out of the workforce, out of the industry, so that these billion-dollar companies don't have to pay
Yeah.
one more person.
Yeah.
And that's really what it comes down to, is that, listen, at the end of the day, these businesses are out to make money, especially in, for my reference, the entertainment industry being as cutthroat as it can be. Of course, they were going to use this to try and save money and exploit people.
Right.
That was
Yeah.
always going to be how it was going to end, regardless of how it begins.
So let me ask you this, because as you started to get older and older, when you first were young, you're very much into the Disney movies and cartoons and so forth were, that was everything. There's cartoons everywhere.
Yeah.
But then movies took a whole different way. Like if we look at Toy Story, whatever, what did you call those types of movies? More the virtual?
Oh, the animated, the
Yeah.
CG movies, yeah.
Okay, where, maybe originally that would have been an actor, but you were able to create now the studios somebody that actually looks almost like a live person.
Oh,
that's what I mean,
a whole
right?
other thing, yeah.
So the virtual world, and I understand that I'm old, but the virtual world is becoming such an entity that I think no matter what, we're going to continue to see live bodies replaced in a lot of different ways with the virtual world. I heard that there's a restaurant in Japan where the servers are robots. So when
well,
does
if
it
there's
end?
any country that could do it, it's Japan, I guess.
When does it end?
Funny you should mention the movies and the fake actors. There was a movie that came out last year. It was called The Flash. It was a superhero movie about a guy who can run really fast. But the point is, at the very end, there's this scene where a bunch of, like, he's running through the multiverse or something like that. But the point is that it shows a bunch of different characters from different franchises, but it's using the likenesses of real actors. So you see Christopher Reeve's Superman appear.
Love.
Even though he has been dead for a very long time, completely recreated with CGI, with AI. And it does the same with a bunch of different characters from all these movies.
Okay.
And that caused a huge stink, because it's like, this isn't even just putting people out of work. It's bringing back dead people to use for a 5-second cut in your movie, so that audiences can point and go, oh, I recognize that.
Right.
It gets to the point where it's beyond exploitive and becomes gross almost.
Wow. It's an interesting topic, isn't it? Maybe we could throw that back. What are your thoughts on that to our viewers? Put your comments below. Do you think that AI is good for businesses, or do you think it's not? I'm on the fence. I know I'm old school. I want to be the one to be talking to people when they're inquiring about our business. I don't want them to feel like they've ever been passed off to somebody that doesn't exist. But my belief might not be entirely correct. But we are definitely hands-on. There's no AI at Terra Real Estate Group, that I can tell you.
Oh, no.
Yeah. But wow, I'm super proud of you.
Oh, well, thank you.
Super proud of you. And do you think that you're going to be joining a talent agency again? How do you foresee your future?
The way I foresee it is my immediate goal for next stage of my life, above all else, is finding a place for myself. That's like, any money that I can save is just being set aside, so maybe one day I can do that.
Sure.
Once I've made enough to be able to really live on my own, next will be seeing if maybe I can construct a home studio that I can work out of.
Right. But you do have your own place in the house that we share together.
I do.
Let's be real.
I
He
do,
has
yes.
his own place where he is.
I do,
but
yes,
I think
but-
you want to buy your own house one day.
Like,
you want
listen,
to
at the end of the day, I'm almost 30. At a certain point, I want to be able to...
buy your place,
Yeah.
get settled. Yeah, of course. And it'll happen.
Yeah,
There's no doubt about it, right?
Yeah.
It starts with savings. This puts an interesting perspective in. When you are a first-time home buyer, it is extremely difficult to get in the market.
Mhm.
And let me tell you something, my son, there are thousands of people that have their own places, their own apartments in their parents' houses, like you do
Yeah.
with me, and saving up until they can go and purchase. It does take a lot longer now. You know this, you're a
It
realtor,
does.
than
Yep.
it did 30 years
Oh,
ago. You know, that's why we have kids.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't have kids to say to you or your brother when you were turning 18, get out, do your own thing.
Right.
I would welcome your brother and his wife back.
Yeah.
Our home is our home.
Yeah.
So you will get there, but, you know, give some thought. If you feel like you still have a passion for the voiceover acting, you know.
Oh, I do.
You know, I think definitely, Austin, there's a studio that can be made where you live right now. It can be done. And you've got the ability of this production studio as well.
Also true.
Right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in this room right now that are standing behind you, kid. Right?
Yeah. Like,
You're the one that can make this happen.
Mhm.
We
Yeah.
cannot make this happen for you.
right. Like right now, I would say my focus is on being a successful real estate agent. That's what I want to be first off, because is what will allow me
Sure.
to further support myself and build a life I can truly call my own. And in the meantime, though, I still got my hobbies that do allow me to sort of dive into that passion a little
Yep.
bit for voice acting. Like, we didn't even talk about it, but I don't think we've ever brought it up before. But last few years, I started sort of getting into a little geeky hobby called Dungeons and Dragons, where I didn't play it at all as a kid, but I started getting into it as a teen and as an adult. But I do character voices with that all the time. Whatever character voice I'm playing, I'll come up with my own voice for him.
Okay, I didn't even know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Didn't know.
like it's
Okay.
it's basically theater
Yeah,
in a
it
way,
is.
where you make your own character, you play it however you want. So I can come up with any character of any race, and I'll come up with a voice for them, and I'll always do it in character.
Wow.
So, like, I can play something sort of like a cocky thief, you know? Someone who's a little bit more interested in himself. Or maybe a bit of a loner.
Very barbarian that was.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, let's wrap this up. We can't wait to see everybody next time. Don't forget
Absolutely.
about Jam Boutique. You've got this giveaway. And with that, we're out.
We're out.
We're out.
See you next time.